Hi there. I just wanted to thank you. Thank you so much for the kind response of so many people to my announcement that I'm going to be publishing Wilshire Boulevard in the not too distant future. Just wanted to thank you. You gave me like a huge boost with your response. So I just wanted to do this little prelude before today's video to thank you and to also tell you that I set up a mailing list. I hope you will join it. It's in the description below. It's an email mailing list, and I'm only going to send out emails like once a month with things about the channel and things about the book. Okay, just general announcements. I'm not going to clutter up your inbox or anything of the sort. I'm not going to spam you. Okay, so please sign up if you're interested in receiving Wilshire Boulevard. I'm going to be posting updates and all the rest of it there. And yeah, so I just want to say that. And so here's the video. Burnout is a serious issue. People don't talk enough about it, it seems to me. Burnout will hit you when you're at the peak of whatever it is that you're doing. Your business, your career, whatsoever it is. When you're at the peak, that's when you're going to get hit by burnout, and it is the thing that can ruin you. And so I'm going to talk about it. So what is burnout? People talk about it, but what's the definition of it? Remember, whenever you're going to be talking about something, especially something important, you want to know exactly what it is. You want to define it from the get-go. Okay? Now, burnout is quite simply that what you are getting out of an activity is less than what you are putting into it. Okay? Think of it like a business. Suppose you have a business where you're spending money on your product. You're spending, say, $100 on your product to make it, to manufacture it, but you're selling it for only $70, right? The deficit is $30, right? So you're going bankrupt little by little, okay? That's burnout. But of course, we people, human beings, we measure the input and output not insofar as dollars are concerned, but in a whole host of factors. There's satisfaction, there's effort, there's time, there's money. All kinds of things go into an activity. And by the same token, all kinds of things come out of an activity. A lot of times you're doing something, like say a hobby, for instance. Say you're building model trains, just to name one hobby. And you're building model trains and you're putting a lot of money and time into it. But the satisfaction of playing with the little train set is enormous, right? And so you're not suffering from burnout, quite the contrary. The satisfaction and happiness you get out of playing with your little train set is far greater than the amount of money and time that you're putting into it. Money and time that you could have devoted to other things, for instance, right? Of course. But see, burnout happens a lot of times in your business, your career, your activity, when you have reached a level of success and you keep on putting into it, putting in time and effort and energy and enthusiasm, and the returns that you're getting are not quite so high as they used to be. And sometimes you're not getting any return. Sometimes it's just misery. And that's when you get hit by burnout. Now, recently you might have noticed that the Coach and Benway podcast has gone on hiatus. Now, I don't know if this is a permanent hiatus or if we'll be back in a few months. That's not the point of what I'm trying to make right now. What I'm trying to say is that, see, the Coach and Benway podcast required a lot of effort on our part. A lot of effort to do the shows and a lot of time. There was preparation to it. And what started to happen was that we weren't getting that much out of it. It was less than what we were putting into it. And so we got burned out. We got tired of it. Because at first it was a lot of fun. We were getting a lot of satisfaction out of doing the podcast. And so the effort that we put into it was compensated by the satisfaction that we were getting out of it. But see, in that activity and in all activities, As you continue to put your time and effort and energy into an activity, what you get out of it begins to be comparatively less and less. Suppose you put X amount of energy and you get Y amount of satisfaction. Of course, you can't quantify satisfaction, but just for the sake of argument. You put in X amount of effort the first time you get it and you get Y amount of satisfaction, or money, or what have you. Then you keep on putting X into the activity, to keep on ringing that bell, right? But see, every Y that you get feels to you as something smaller and smaller. How many times have you heard about some rich guy and he's telling you about how he was like dirt poor and he was working out of his basement or garage or whatever, and he did this little invention and it got him like $100. He was so happy about it, right? But then later he's got $1 billion and he's like, oh, another million? Fuck it, I'm not gonna bother doing it. And you're like, but you went crazy with enthusiasm and energy over $100, but over $1 million you dismiss it and don't bother. What's going on? The $100 that he got at the beginning was worth a great deal because he had zero. It was, for all intents and purposes, an infinite amount of money. I mean, his situation had improved from $0 to $100 by an infinite amount, percentage-wise at any rate. But if he's got $1 billion, what's another million? It's just 1/1000th of a billion. So who gives a shit, You see what I'm saying? I mean, think of it in your own terms right now, for instance. Suppose between your car and this and that, the other, you have a total nest egg of, say, $20,000, right? Are you really going to pull an all-nighter in order to earn $20, say? Probably not. It's too much effort to get so little return. Of course, if you were like, dirt poor in some, third world shithole, $20 would be a lot. And you'd jump through all kinds of hoops to get it because you have zero. But if you got a nest egg already, $20. Burnout comes from that. You're putting the same amount of effort into an activity, or perhaps in order to maintain your position in that activity, maintain your position in your career or your business, you have to put even more effort every time. But the return that you're getting is marginal. You don't even feel it. You feel like you're just making sacrifices and getting nothing in return. That's burnout. That's when you start to hit that wall. And everybody hits it, okay? It happens to everybody. Everybody has a successful business, a successful career, and they're doing great, and they're ringing that bell every time, ding, 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 ding. But they start to feel that the returns that they are getting, the satisfaction, the money, this, that, whatever it is that you are getting paid with for your activity, well, it becomes less and less valuable. So you have to guard against it. Guys who burn out, and like I said, we can all get there. Guys who burn out, they do one of two things. They either start not putting in the effort into their business, and therefore the returns start to go down, down, down until eventually they hit zero, and they're, everything they worked for is destroyed, right? Because they just couldn't keep it up anymore because they were exhausted, right? Either that happens, or they pivot to a different activity that they know nothing about, that they are incompetent in. Now the second actually happens more than you think, more than you realize it. Look around you. How many guys are very successful at one thing? Say, how many times have you heard of some singer, and the guy's he's a really great singer, right? And he has hits and the chart toppers and all the rest of it, and he decides that, oh no, I'm going to stop touring and stop recording, and I'm going to become like an actor. And he fails totally, right? Happens all the time. And not just in that, it happens in every line of business, every kind of project. A guy is doing one thing and he's very capable and competent in that, but he just gets exhausted, he burns out, and so he pivots to something that he is incompetent in, that he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, right? And he fails. And then what does that guy do? He like tries to return to the thing that he was good at. And sometimes he's able to return and sometimes not. I don't know if you recall, like it happened to Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player ever. He got burnt out, He was playing basketball and he won championships and all the rest of it. He'd reached all the mountaintops as a basketball player. And he decided to retire and pivot into baseball. And what happened as a baseball player? Well, you know, he kind of sucked at it, you know? I mean, yeah, he's a great basketball player, the greatest ever, but as a baseball player, he was at best mediocre, at best. You know, he never got out of minor league baseball, right? Never got to the major leagues. Yeah, because, you know, that wasn't his thing. And so eventually what happened? He realized that all the effort he was putting into baseball was just not getting him any returns. And he pivoted back to basketball. And lucky for him, he was able to return and, you know, everything was copacetic, right? But that often is not the case. That's in fact rare. Most guys who pivot out and then try to return fail, okay? So you see what can happen to you. You pivot out of what you're good at into something that you suck at, and you suck at it, and the returns are even less than before, no matter how much effort you put into it. And then you try to go back to the thing you were good at, and you know that arena that you were in, it's left you behind, and you're left with nothing. So you see how dangerous burnout can be? So you have to guard against it. And there are two ways to guard against this. The first thing is, of course, to recognize it. You have to recognize that this is the problem happening. It's not that you're falling out of love with your career or your business. It's not that you're sick of it and just want to, you know, just chuck it all. No, that's not it. You don't want to be throwing away something that took you so long to build. You don't want to be chucking it out the window just because you're a little bit tired now. You see what I'm saying? No, you never want to chuck it out the window. What you want to do is recognize the problem, that you are getting fewer and fewer returns for the effort that you're putting into it, okay? That's the first thing you want to do. Recognize the problem. The second thing you want to do is figure out ways how to change this around. You have the input, the amount of effort and time and energy that you put into the activity, and the return, how much you're getting from it in terms of money, in terms of satisfaction, in terms of whatever it is that you're getting out of it, okay? You have to measure the two and figure out one of two things. Can I lower the amount of input that I'm sticking into it, which would of course make it relative that the return grows? Or is there a way that I have to keep on putting the same amount of effort, or maybe a little more even, but get a lot more return, a lot more satisfaction, a lot more money, a lot more whatever? You see what I'm saying? You have to look at your equation insofar as your activity, what you're putting in and what you're taking out, and figure out how to either minimize the one to make the other rise, relatively speaking, or maintain and maximize the other. Now, if you cannot do this, if you cannot, you know, minimize your input to sort of like elevate the output somehow, right? You have to figure out something novel. You have to figure out a way of, like, for instance, how can I stop doing this and have somebody else do it for me and still get the returns? Or maybe not all of the returns, but the lion's share of the returns. You see what I'm saying? Because a lot of guys get locked into this notion that only they can do this activity. This happens a lot in business. You have a lot of business people in their own business or in corporations or what have you that feel that only they can do some activity. And that's not true. See, you can hire other people. It could be that you started a flower shop, for instance, and it's very successful. And you're working and you're managing it, and you're managing your flower shop, and maybe a second and a third and a fourth. And you know, you're working like a dog, right? But you know, you're starting to feel burnt out. And well, what can you do? Well, you can hire a professional manager to manage your flower shops. Maybe one of them, maybe all of them. You see what I'm saying? And yeah, you're going to have to pay that manager or those managers who are going to be replacing you, but you're still going to get the lion's share of the money, right? You're not going to be putting in that input anymore. You're going to get the output, the returns, but no input because some other schmuck is going to be doing it for you. You see what I'm saying? Right. So, you keep your guard up against burnout. You make sure that it doesn't happen, or if you start to see the signs, you start to look for ways to fix the situation, right? Now, here's the thing, and this, very few guys are able to do this, but the guys who are able to do this are the guys who live well. Sometimes, some activity that you're good at and that's going well and all the rest of it, sometimes you start to get to that point of burnout. And that's when you have to realize, this is the end. This is the end of this chapter in my life. I'm not going to put any more effort because there's nothing more that I can get out of it. This happens with a lot of business people who have started some business, some company, and it was very successful and they put a lot of time and effort into it. And after 10, 20 years at it, they've grown it as best they can and it's very successful, and they decide to just sell it off and walk away. It's hard to do that, but it's actually the best thing that you can do. Because a lot of times you can't fight burnout. You can't fight it. It's a chapter in your life, and you have to, turn the page. You ended that chapter in your life, and it was a lovely chapter. But you got to turn the page and go in a different direction. See? Sometimes you just get to the end of the road of whatever you're doing. And so you have to be mature enough, man enough, self-aware enough to recognize that sometimes that's it. That's all she wrote. The fat lady sang and the curtains are falling and, the opera is over. See what I'm saying? And that's really hard. It's a really hard thing to do. You see it with athletes. Great athletes, and it's over, and they cannot walk away. And they start putting more and more effort into something, and the returns are even smaller and smaller, and it's just fucking sad. You see what I'm saying? Kenny Rogers, the country western singer or whatever, he had that song, The Gambler. You got to know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. Yeah. Well, he was talking about being a shady gambler, but it applies to all of life. You see what I'm saying? Now, you don't want to fall into burnout, because a lot of times what happens is that a guy who falls into burnout, who just falls headfirst into it, just falls into depression, and he just starts to circle the drain and he goes down the tubes, and sometimes nothing will get him back. Okay? So what you want to do is, when you start to feel burnt out, you got to walk away from the activity. Just shut it down properly. Be orderly, be organized, do it, well. But shut it down and start looking around for a new mountaintop. Because men are either designed by God or evolved by nature into being organisms that need a mountaintop. Women don't need a mountaintop. Women don't need to climb and master something great, but men do. It gives our lives purpose. When we feel that we have a mountaintop that we have to master, that we have to get on top of, no matter what that mountaintop might be, it could be a business, it could be a personal relationship, building a family, whatever it is, whatever is your mountaintop, you need it. And I know it because, like, in times of my life that I've had a mountaintop, man, like getting up in the morning, I can't wait to get up in the morning. I can't wait to get to the fucking office. It's just a breeze, My days just fly by. I'm having so much fun. I'm quote unquote working, but for me, it's just fucking playing around and having a good time, I know those days, and those are the best days of your life, right? And I know those days too where you're like, oh fuck, I gotta go to work, I gotta do this, why? And you could be successful, that's the worst part. You can be real successful. And you're like, oh, I don't wanna go, I wanna chuck it. Okay, you wanna guard against that feeling. Guard against it. Once again, I just rambled at the end of this video, but I hope I put across the major points that I wanted to make in this video. See, burnout is something that people just do not fucking talk enough about. but it is devastating. It can wreck your life, because what can happen is that all the effort and the years spent achieving something can, in a moment of anger, in a moment of frustration, in a moment of tiredness, because that's what burnout is. It's just being tired. In a moment of being tired, you can wind up throwing away the most valuable things in your life. So be careful.